You didn't click this video by accident. A message was already sent to you 1 week ago, not in words, not in a dream, not in something obvious, but in what happened and what didn't happen, in what you lost, in what got delayed, in what silently changed direction in your life while you were too busy to notice. And now you're here, wondering why this feels strangely familiar, as if something inside you already knows what this is about. Ibn Arabi said, "There are no random moments, no empty silence, no meaningless delay." So if you ignored it once, why is it coming back to you now? 1. The message was already sent. You keep waiting for a loud sign, something undeniable, something that forces you to stop, look, and say, "Now I understand." But Ibn Arabi points to a different reality. The message of Allah does not always arrive as something dramatic. In fact, the most important messages rarely do. Sometimes the message is already inside what you dismissed. That delay you experienced last week, that sudden change of plans, that door that closed without explanation, that conversation that didn't lead anywhere, that moment you called bad timing or bad luck, it may not have been random at all. It may have been the message itself, already delivered in a form you didn't recognize. Because life does not only speak through events that happen, it also speaks through what does not happen, through what is withheld, through what is paused, through what is taken slightly off course. Ibn Arabi teaches that nothing enters existence without meaning, and nothing is removed without wisdom. But the human mind is trained to only understand direct outcomes. If something works out, we call it good. If it doesn't, we call it failure. But spiritual reality doesn't operate in that simple way. What if the message wasn't what you received, but what you were prevented from receiving? What if the warning wasn't in what arrived, but in what was delayed just long enough to shift your path? Most people keep searching for clarity in the future, thinking understanding will come later. But often, understanding is already behind them, already in the moment they ignored, already in the situation they brushed aside because it didn't look important at the time. And this is where the deeper truth becomes uncomfortable. Because if the message was already sent, then the question is no longer, will I receive guidance? The question becomes, did I recognize it when it came? And most people don't. 2. Ignorance is not innocence. Most people think not understanding a message makes them free from responsibility. They assume that if they didn't notice the sign, then it doesn't count. If they didn't realize the warning, then it cannot be held against them. But Ibn Arabi challenges this assumption at its root. In his understanding, awareness is not created at the moment of recognition. Awareness already exists. It is simply either open or covered. The message is not absent when you fail to see it. It is present, but your perception is not aligned with it. This is why ignorance is not as innocent as it feels, because many of the signs in life are not hidden in complexity. They are hidden in familiarity, in things you see too often to question, in patterns you repeat so often that they begin to feel normal, in emotions you dismiss because you've already experienced them before. You don't always miss guidance because it is unclear. You miss it because it feels ordinary. A repeated delay becomes just life. A blocked path becomes bad luck. A sudden discomfort becomes stress. A strong inner hesitation becomes overthinking. And slowly, what may have been a message becomes something you mentally erase without investigation. Ibn Arabi's perspective shifts this completely. He suggests that nothing in existence is disconnected from meaning, which means even your confusion is not meaningless. Even your inability to understand is not outside the system of guidance. But here is where the deeper tension lies. If everything carries meaning, then ignoring meaning does not make it disappear. It only means you have moved past it without decoding it. This is why two people can live the same moment, and one sees guidance while the other sees nothing. The event is identical. The difference is not in what happened outside, but in what was received inside. So the real question is not whether the message was there. The question is whether your perception was open enough to recognize it, or closed enough to turn it into something ordinary, and most people never question what they have already decided is normal. 3. Repetition is mercy. There is a pattern most people misunderstand in their lives. When something happens once, they call it coincidence. When it happens twice, they call it bad luck. When it happens again, they start feeling frustrated, even cursed. But Ibn Arabi points toward a deeper truth that changes the entire interpretation of repetition. Repetition is not confusion. Repetition is communication. When the same type of situation keeps returning into your life, it is not because life is stuck. It is because the lesson has not been understood yet. The external form may change, but the inner message remains the same. Different faces, different moments, different circumstances, but the same emotional signal repeating itself. Most people think change only comes through new experiences, but in reality, growth often comes through the same experience being delivered again in slightly different form, until something finally shifts within the person receiving it. This is where mercy is hidden inside repetition, because if Allah wanted to leave you unaware, the pattern would stop. It would disappear without explanation. But when something keeps returning, it is not to punish you. It is to bring your attention back to something you keep overlooking. Ibn Arabi's perspective invites a different question here. Not why is this happening again, but what have I still not understood from what keeps happening? And this question is uncomfortable because it removes the idea that you are a passive observer of your life. It suggests that life is interactive, that it responds, that it reflects, that it adjusts its signals based on your level of understanding. So repetition becomes a form of persistence in mercy, not giving up on you, not changing the message until it is understood, not removing the sign until it has fulfilled its purpose. And the deeper reality is this: what you call repetition is actually guidance refusing to be ignored until it finally becomes understood, not just experienced. 4. What you lost was not random. There is a moment in every person's life when something leaves and the mind immediately tries to classify it as loss. A door closes, a person disappears, an opportunity slips away, a plan collapses without warning. And in that instant, the human instinct is almost always the same: to search for what went wrong and to assume something has been taken away unfairly. But Ibn Arabi approaches this entirely differently. He does not begin with the idea of loss. He begins with the idea of placement. Nothing arrives without being placed, and nothing leaves without being removed with intention. What if what you call loss was never actually meant to stay in your life in the first place? The human mind resists this idea because it is attached to timing. You wanted it when you had it. You needed it when it was near you. You imagined a future built around it. So when it disappears, the entire inner structure collapses with it. Not because it was permanent, but because you believed it was. And this is where the illusion of loss begins. Because most of what we grieve is not the thing itself, but the future we attach to it. We don't just lose people, opportunities, or situations. We lose the stories we built around them, the imagined outcomes, the expected versions of ourselves that depended on their continuation. Ibn Arabi's insight disrupts this entirely. He suggests that existence is not random accumulation, but precise unfolding. Every arrival is timed. Every departure is measured. Nothing is outside the design of meaning, even if the meaning is not immediately visible. So when something leaves, it is not a question of, why did I lose this? The deeper question becomes, why did this only exist in my life for this specific duration? Because duration itself is part of the message. There are things that enter your life to build you, and there are things that enter your life to reveal you. But there are also things that enter only to exit at the exact moment their purpose is complete, not a moment earlier, not a moment later. The difficulty is that human awareness does not update in real time. Understanding often arrives after the experience has already ended. That delay creates emotional resistance. The mind says, if I understood this now, I would have held on differently. But understanding does not come to preserve attachment. It comes to dissolve illusion. What you call loss is often simply the end of a role something was playing in your journey. And when that role is complete, continuation is no longer meaning. It becomes distortion. Think about how often you have looked back at something you desperately wanted to hold on to, only to realize later that its continuation would have led you somewhere you are no longer meant to be. At the time of separation, you could not see that because you were standing inside the moment, not outside its pattern. Ibn Arabi would say that what leaves you was never separate from you in essence. It was part of a temporary alignment, a meeting point between your path and its function. When that alignment completes its purpose, separation is not destruction, it is correction. But the ego experiences correction as pain, because the ego is not concerned with truth. It is concerned with continuity. It wants things to remain consistent with its expectations. It interprets change as interruption, even when that change is refinement. This is why loss feels like confusion. Not because meaning is absent, but because perspective is limited. If you could see the entire structure of your life at once, you would not call anything loss. You would see placement, timing, completion, and transition all functioning together. But because you were inside the sequence, not outside it, you only feel the moment of removal, and that moment feels like breaking. But Ibn Arabi points towards something more subtle. He suggests that nothing that is truly meant for your being is ever lost. It only changes form, location, or timing. What is not aligned with your essence cannot remain, no matter how strongly you hold it. And what is aligned with your essence does not need to be forced to stay. So what you experience as losing something may actually be the removal of something that was never meant to define your path permanently. This is where acceptance becomes more than emotional coping. It becomes recognition of order, because once you begin to see patterns instead of isolated events, you start to understand that life is not subtracting from you. It is refining what remains with you, and refinement often feels like removal before it feels like clarity. There is another layer to this that is even more difficult to accept. Sometimes what leaves you does not leave because it is bad for you in a moral sense. It leaves because your level of understanding has changed. What once matched your inner state no longer aligns with it. You have shifted, even slightly, and the relationship between you and what you lost can no longer hold the same structure. So separation is not always rejection. Sometimes it is mismatch created by growth, and growth, by nature, disrupts familiarity. This is why Ibn Arabi's perspective is not comforting in the conventional sense. It does not try to remove the pain of loss by denying it. Instead, it redefines the meaning of what loss actually is. It forces a different kind of seeing. Not everything that leaves is gone. Not everything that disappears is missing. Not everything that ends is failure. Some things leave because they have completed their function in the architecture of your life. And once that function is complete, holding on to it would not preserve meaning. It would delay transformation. So the real question is not what you lost. The real question is what has now become possible because it is gone. 5. Delay is divine protection. There is a kind of silence that feels personal. When you ask for something and it does not arrive. When you make a decision and the path does not open. When you expect movement, but instead you are met with stillness. In those moments, the human mind almost immediately fills the gap with doubt. Doubt about timing, doubt about direction, doubt about whether anything is responding at all. But Ibn Arabi's perspective shifts the entire meaning of delay. He does not see it as absence of response. He sees it as refinement of timing, not rejection, not neglect, not indifference, but precise withholding until alignment is complete. Because in his understanding, what reaches you is never separate from your readiness to receive it. The mind, however, does not measure readiness. The mind measures desire. It wants what it wants when it wants it. And when that timing is not met, It assumes something is wrong with the process. But what if nothing is wrong with the process? What if the process is actually protecting you from receiving something before you are capable of carrying it? This is where delay becomes something far more complex than frustration. At surface level, delay feels like denial. You move forward in intention, but life does not mirror your speed. You feel as if you are being held back, as if something is blocking your path. But Ibn Arabi invites a different interpretation, that what feels like blockage may actually be filtration. Not everything that is delayed is denied, and not everything that is denied is punishment. There are moments when what you want is not harmful in itself, but the timing of its arrival would be harmful to you. Not because of the thing, but because of your internal state at the moment of receiving it. The same situation, the same opportunity, the same connection can either build you or overwhelm you, depending on your readiness. And readiness is not something the ego can accurately judge. The ego assumes maturity because of desire, but spiritual alignment operates differently. It considers stability, awareness, emotional capacity, and unseen consequences that the present self cannot calculate. So what you experience as not happening may actually be a form of unseen protection. The difficulty is that protection rarely feels like protection while you are inside it. It feels like restriction. It feels like distance. It feels like being overlooked, because the human perspective is immediate, not comprehensive. It sees the desire but not the outcome that is being prevented. Ibn Arabi's lens suggests that there are layers of reality occurring simultaneously. One layer is what you want. Another layer is what you are prepared for. And a deeper layer is what is actually aligned with your path. When these layers are not synchronized, delay appears. But delay is not dysfunction. It is synchronization in progress. Think of how often you have looked back at something you once desperately wanted, only to realize later that receiving it at that time would have destabilized your life in ways you could not have predicted. At the moment of waiting, you could not see that. You only saw absence. But from a wider perspective, that absence was structure. This is why Ibn Arabi does not encourage the seeker to interpret silence as emptiness. He encourages interpretation of silence as communication that requires a different kind of attention, because not all answers come in the form of arrival. Some answers come in the form of pause, and pause is not inactivity. It is recalibration. There is also another layer that is harder to accept. Sometimes delay is not about preventing something from reaching you, but about preparing you to reach it without distortion. The same experience, if entered too early, can be consumed incorrectly, not because it is wrong, but because perception is incomplete. So delay becomes a form of refinement of perception itself. It is not only what you receive that matters, it is who you are when you receive it. And this is where the meaning of divine protection becomes clearer. Protection is not always dramatic. It is often invisible. It does not announce itself. It does not explain itself in real time. It simply redirects outcomes in ways that only become understandable after perspective has expanded. The ego resists this deeply because it equates timing with control. If it is not happening now, it feels like loss of authority. But Ibn Arabi dissolves that assumption entirely. He suggests that real control was never in timing to begin with. It was in alignment, and alignment is not rushed. It is formed. So what you call delay may actually be the process of life ensuring that when something finally arrives, it does not destabilize you, but integrates with you. And sometimes, what feels like waiting is actually preparation you cannot yet recognize as preparation, because clarity often arrives after readiness, not before it. 6. Awareness is the real awakening. There is a difference between seeing something and realizing what you are seeing. Most people assume that awakening is about discovering something new, something hidden, something previously unknown. But Ibn Arabi points towards something more subtle and far more difficult to accept. Awakening is not about adding more to what you see, but about removing what prevents you from understanding what is already in front of you. In other words, nothing essential is actually hidden from you. What is hidden is your ability to fully recognize it. This is why awareness becomes the real turning point, because the world does not suddenly change when a person awakens. The same events continue, the same people remain, the same situations unfold. What changes is not the outer reality, but the depth of perception interpreting it. And this is where most people misunderstand their own lives. They keep waiting for a dramatic shift in circumstances, believing that clarity will arrive only when something external transforms. But Ibn Arabi's view suggests that transformation begins internally, long before anything outside appears different. Awareness is not triggered by new information. It is triggered by a new way of receiving existing information. This is why two people can live through the same moment and experience completely different realities. One sees chaos, confusion, and randomness. The other sees pattern, meaning, and direction. The event is identical, but the awareness is not. So awakening is not about escaping the world. It is about reinterpreting it correctly. And this is where the deeper difficulty begins. Because if awareness is the real awakening, then ignorance is not simply lack of knowledge. It is misinterpretation of what is already known. It is not absence of truth. It is distortion of perception. Ibn Arabi often emphasizes that reality is continuously speaking, but not in the language people expect. It speaks through timing, through repetition, through absence, through subtle alignment of events that appear disconnected on the surface. But when awareness is limited, all of these signals are reduced to coincidence. Nothing feels connected. Everything feels random. Life feels like a sequence of unrelated experiences instead of a structured unfolding. But that fragmentation is not in reality. It is in perception. This is why awareness changes everything without changing anything. Because when awareness expands, patterns begin to appear where there was previously only confusion. What once felt like separate incidents begins to reveal itself as a connected structure, not because the events changed, but because the observer changed. And this is the part that challenges the ego the most, because the ego wants transformation to be visible. It wants proof in the external world. It wants confirmation that something has shifted. But awareness does not always provide external confirmation. It works silently. It reshapes understanding before it reshapes experience. So you may remain in the same situation, but no longer interpret it the same way. And that shift alone changes everything internally, even before anything changes externally. This is why Ibn Arabi's perspective is not about escape from reality, but deeper immersion into it. Not by accumulating more information, but by refining perception until reality becomes readable in its true form. And once that happens, nothing feels accidental anymore. Not because life becomes predictable, but because it becomes intelligible at a deeper level. Even confusion begins to carry meaning. Even delay begins to carry structure. Even loss begins to carry direction. Not because these experiences change, but because awareness no longer treats them as isolated fragments. It begins to see them as part of a unified unfolding. This is the shift that most people search for outside themselves, without realizing it must occur inside first. Awareness does not remove difficulty from life. It removes misunderstanding from experience, and that removal alone is what changes suffering into understanding, and randomness into recognition. But the hardest truth is this: what you are searching for is not far from you. It is already happening. You are simply being asked to see it differently. 7. You are never left. There is a moment in every seeker's journey where silence feels final, not just quiet, but heavy, as if something has stopped responding, as if the connection that once felt close has faded into distance. In that space, the mind begins to construct stories of abandonment, stories of being forgotten, stories of being left behind in a world that keeps moving forward without you. But Ibn Arabi's perspective does not accept the idea of separation in the way the ego experiences it, because what the ego calls distance is often only a change in perception, not a change in presence. You are never actually removed from meaning. You are never disconnected from the source of guidance. What changes is your ability to recognize the relationship between yourself and what has always been surrounding you. And this is where the illusion of being left begins. It does not begin in reality. It begins in interpretation. When life becomes unclear, the mind assumes disconnection. When answers do not arrive in expected form, the mind assumes silence. When outcomes do not align with desire, the mind assumes absence. But Ibn Arabi points towards something deeper. Absence is never absolute. It is always relative to perception. What feels like abandonment is often closeness that has not yet been understood, because presence does not always announce itself in comfort. Sometimes it appears in confusion. Sometimes it appears in delay. Sometimes it appears in forms that do not match expectation at all. And when expectation dominates awareness, recognition becomes blocked. So the feeling of being left is not evidence of separation. It is evidence of misalignment between what is present and how it is being interpreted. And this is the hardest part for the human heart to accept, because emotional experience feels like proof. If it feels like distance, then it must be distance. If it feels like silence, then it must be silence. But Ibn Arabi challenges this direct translation between feeling and reality. Not everything that is felt is accurate in meaning. Some feelings are reflections of limited perception, not reflections of actual truth. This is why two people can stand in the same moment and experience entirely different realities. One feels lost, the other feels guided. One feels abandoned, the other feels accompanied. The external world has not changed, but the internal interpretation has. So the real shift is not in being found again. The real shift is in realizing you were never actually lost. You were simply unable to recognize the form in which presence was already there. There is also another layer that deepens this understanding. Sometimes what feels like distance is actually refinement of closeness, because certain forms of connection cannot be perceived through attachment. They can only be perceived through awareness. When attachment dominates, presence feels conditional. When awareness dominates, presence becomes constant. This is why Ibn Arabi speaks of unity in existence, not as a concept, but as a shift in perception, where separation begins to dissolve as an absolute idea. From this perspective, nothing is truly outside the field of connection. Even what appears distant is still within it. Even what feels silent is still part of it. Even what seems lost is still contained within its structure. So when you feel left, what is actually happening is not separation from guidance, but limitation in recognizing its form. And that limitation is not punishment. It is part of unfolding awareness, because recognition cannot be forced. It develops, it matures, it expands. And as it expands, what once felt like absence begins to reveal itself as presence in disguise. This is why Ibn Arabi does not frame the seeker as someone trying to reach something far away. He frames the seeker as someone learning to see what has always been near, but not yet understood. So the final question is not whether you have been left. The final question is whether you are interpreting closeness through the right level of awareness. Because if awareness shifts, even silence begins to speak. And what once felt like distance begins to feel like guidance that never stopped. If you've made it this far, then this was not just a video for you, it was a reminder. Because nothing reaches you twice by accident. Not the message, not the timing, not even the feeling you're left with right now. Ibn Arabi teaches that when understanding arrives late, it is still not late at all. It is simply arriving when the heart is finally able to recognize it. So don't rush to close this and move on like it was nothing. Sit with it, question it, Let it unfold inside you in silence, because the real message was never just in the words you heard. It was in the moment you finally understood why you were meant to hear them.